I'm Lisa Shepard, and I am the Executive Director of the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism. The mission of the CJCP is to enhance professionalism among North Carolina lawyers, judges, and law students, a mission which it has been doing since 1998. One of the ways that the CJCP does this is to sponsor this historical video series, which is a collection of video interviews of distinguished lawyers, judges, and professionals from across North Carolina. The CJCP began filming these video interviews in 2000 as a means to preserve the thoughts of these bar leaders on the legal profession and on professionalism issues. All of the videos in this series are available to you on the CJCP website and the CJCP's dedicated YouTube channel. We are so fortunate to have had many distinguished members of the North Carolina Bar over the years, and they have much accumulated wisdom to share with us. It is important to understand that the practice of law is a profession, and doing it well requires not only substantive knowledge that one gains in law school and from studying for the bar exam, but also the value of experience learned from other lawyers. I hope that this video series will give you not only a fresh insight into the person being interviewed, but also some meaningful information about how to be a better lawyer in your own practice. Enjoy, and remember, esse quam videri. Strive to be professional in all that you do, rather than to merely seem so.
Thank you for joining us today for another in our historical video series for the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism. My name is Mel Wright, and we're here in Asheville, North Carolina for Philip Smith to interview the honoree today, Roy W. Davis, Jr.
Hi, I'm Philip J. Smith of the Van Winkle Law Firm in Asheville, North Carolina. Today, it is my honor and privilege to introduce Roy W. Davis and discuss with him his outstanding legal career. Roy attended Davidson College from 1948 to 1952 and then went to UNC Law School and graduated there in 1955. From there, he went to the Army JAG Corps and was in Rucker, Alabama from 1956 to 1959. Roy has an outstanding work history. He's been president not only of the Van Winkle Law Firm, but president of the 28th Judicial District Bar. He's been vice president of the North Carolina Bar Association and has chaired several committees, including the Administration of Justice and the Young Lawyers Division. Roy has been a state bar counselor for 12 years, starting in 1974, and thereafter became president of North Carolina State Bar. He's also been a fellow and state chair of the American College of Trial Lawyers, and also he is a fellow of the International Society of Barristers. He has numerous volunteer activities. Those have included chair of the Ethics Committee of the North Carolina State Bar. He's been a member of the American Bar Association House of Delegates. He's also been on the board and chaired or been president of Pisgah Legal Services. And he's been chancellor of the Episcopal Diocese since 1975. He's been on the board of directors of Memorial Mission Hospital here in Asheville. And he has also served as a member of the Jaycees and has been an attorney for the local chapter of the Girl Scouts here. His contributions are well recognized. Roy has received an award called the PLS Award. It is actually now named after Roy for dedicated volunteers, those who have done exemplary work in the field of providing civil legal services for the needy. Roy has also received the Centennial Award by the 28th Judicial District Bar, and then just recently has received the Chief Justice's Professionalism Award in 2009. Why did you choose to enter the legal profession, Roy?
Well, I had no other choice, actually. My life really has not been a case of having a clear call as a youth to foresee exactly what I was going to do. So I was at Davidson, got a good education. I could quote Shakespeare, but I couldn't do anything anybody would pay for. So it looked like I had to do something else. And of course, a lot of guys at Davidson were going on to grad school, med school, law school, otherwise. So, you know, there you are, you're a senior, what the hell are you going to do? So we look around. I concentrated in humanities, avoided science, avoided math. Pretty good record in humanities, though. That certainly fit with law school. So we looked around, and among the law schools that were good, clearly Carolina was the most attractive financially. So that my dad made that decision. He decided where I'd go. But anyway, that led me to law school and the discipline there, and then beyond.
Well, now, wasn't your dad an attorney?
My dad was a lawyer, and of course I was acquainted with the entire bar. This is McDowell County, or as it's stated by the natives, McDowell County. McDowell County had a small bar, but very rich fellowship, a lot of collegiality, and I was aware of that and observed it. So that did influence, I guess. I'd seen that pattern, and it was fairly close to me, and it fit my undergraduate education. But my dad did have an influence on me, and those other lawyers, good lawyers down there in McDowell.
Well, who were the other lawyers that set an example for you or helped you with your legal career?
Sandy Dameron was about as good a trial lawyer as I've seen, and just very professional, very straight, honest, and civil. Some of those other lawyers I noticed shouted occasionally in cross-examination, but Dameron never did. So I thought that was a pretty good model. I would mention also Paul Story down there in the days of my youth and early practice. He was a mentor and senior partner for Bob Hunter, actually. That's the Mountain Bob of the Court of Appeals. But anyway, Paul Story was a very aggressive guy, but very professional and very independent, which I would call a dear aspect of professionalism. But I remember he went over for the State Board of Elections to Madison County, which has its occasional political disruptions, and there was some unpleasantness over there. But Paul Story went over there and straightened it out, which didn't exactly endear him to the Democrats of Madison County, but I thought that was a great mark of professionalism and independence. So there were and others, but we were certainly collegial though, so that they were civil and enjoyed one another, and it was a very attractive group, and it also demonstrated and taught to me the collegiality that can exist among lawyers. It is a fellowship. That's one of the richest aspects of life as an attorney, that you've got brothers and sisters with common interests, and you can enjoy their company and learn from them and work with them, work against them, and it's a good experience.
Did you first start your practice in Marion?
I came back from law school and practiced about 6 months and went in the Army. Then I came back and stayed a little less than a year before moving to what is now known as the Van Winkle Law Firm. When I first came, we had an office on the second floor of a building. Everybody stayed there, and then there was the attic above, and they had constructed a office of sorts about 8 by 8, in the
stairwell, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a stairwell, and in the attic. And so Jim Richmond was another associate just before me to coming to this firm, which incidentally had 6 lawyers and was known among the Buncombe County Bar as We the People, because they were larger at 6 or 7 than anybody else here. But anyway, Jim Richmond and I were assigned to that, outer fringes of the firm up in that office. So I didn't get an office when I came. They offered me a salary which was considerably more than I was making in Marion, but it wasn't $2,000. And the thing about it is they let it run year after year after year, and was never considering an advancement in pay or advancement in my status in the firm. I remember my O.E. Starnes, who's still here, of course, but was my senior and who really hired me. Well, at the end of 1 year, I came in and asked him if we get a bonus, and then the dadgum guy gave me $100 out of his pocket and said, "Go away." So it wasn't, I wasn't overpaid, and after all, I only had a wife and 3 children, and with another one on the way, but no medical benefits at all, and $600 a month. It could have been better, but it's worked out over time that it's been a pleasant place to be.
Well, were there attorneys in Asheville that you looked up to and thought provided a good example for you?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of those. I guess Landon Roberts, outside the firm, would be one of my most admired mentors. But I would go, I would bounce around doing the insurance defense work in all these county seats, and they were mentors there. In fact, somehow some of the older guys I became very good friends with, even though I was against them periodically. So Frank Ferguson, a very colorful Waynesville lawyer, was a mentor. In fact, I was over there in Waynesville at some kind of session, bunch of lawyers scheduling the case, no judge, and we're all talking about this, that, and the other, and I'm talking big. I'm apparently doing a good bit of talking, and I'm maybe not dominating, but trying to get it out. And Ferguson was a part of it, and after the meeting, Ferguson came to me and said, "Son, I want you to remember this. You ain't learning much when you're doing all the talking." So those were words of wisdom, and from Frank Ferguson. Landon, the thing about Landon was a very able lawyer, but very professional, very clean, very honest, and very effective. But the thing about Landon, that he could share all the stories, he could give you all the lore of years before here in this western North Carolina area. So, and he had a sure instinct for seeing what was colorful or ludicrous or really worth recording. So Landon was a great help, but there are many others in this bar were of help, but really throughout the western part of the state. None of them quite as the whole group there in Marion, I thought, were very professional. Of course, in those days, they were all male, very few women attorneys, and very few black attorneys in this area. But the collegiality, as Landon demonstrated that, and the bar here demonstrated that, I thought was very rewarding.
How did you get involved with the State Bar, North Carolina State Bar?
Well, that's another story another chapter in what I'm telling you about the theme of my life is that basically I'm not looking for something and I don't have ambition to be there, but it just turns up that avenue is available and it looks like it's worth taking. And this is certainly not an example of professionalism, but I'm giving you a lot of long answers here, Phil, but this one I think maybe is worthy as any of them. It may have even been president of the State Bar, H. Kenneth Buck Lee of this bar, I'd been in practice 6, 7 years, and I was happily working my profession there. And one day, H. Kenneth Lee turned up in my office, and he said, "Davis, our counselor to the State Bar Council has just died, and I'm gonna elect you to that job." And I said, "You know, counsel of the State Bar, what the hell is that? You know, I'm not too integrated with that. I don't have ambitions in that direction. I haven't participated." Maybe I wasn't quite that ignorant, but it was shocking to me. He came on two grounds. Number one, we're talking about the State Bar Council, and number two, he's already elected me. So he called some session of the local, I think there were two bars. There was the informal bar, the Buncombe County Bar Association, and the 29th Judicial District. So he called a meeting of the 29th Judicial District. About a half a dozen people came, and I was elected to the State Bar Council. Not too much professionalism there, but that may have been the most significant development in my professional life, to get on to the State Bar Council for many reasons. But maybe that's a long enough answer for that one.
Well, but why were you interested? As you got involved with the State Bar, why did that become of interest to you?
Well, the collegiality, I was participating in the Bar Association. The collegiality of it interested me. And then, you know, I always thought that, you know, it would be that you ought to try to make an example. You ought to try to do it right. You ought to try to live to the standards of the profession at its best, and that fit in pretty well. Of course, that's essentially the State Bar objective. State Bar exists to discipline lawyers or set standards and try to encourage professionalism and encourage the high-minded practice of law, so that fit in pretty well. And listen, you're dealing with a great bunch of guys. They're from all over the state of North Carolina, and if they got on the council, I mean, they had something going for them. I mean, they had gifts to get into that position. So in that context, you see, you get what, a host of mentors in that context, and then you begin to see how it works. You begin to see the machine, you begin to see the developments, and understand maybe how, to some degree, you can influence events. So, and I must say, being the boss ain't bad, because you weren't the boss, but I mean, there's a certain satisfaction in leadership. In fact, I always felt, I mean, if you put me on the back row, I'm liable to stand up and say something nasty. But you put me up there at the front, for some reason, the Lord just saves me from that. You know, I imagine there are a lot of lawyers like that. Being at a position of leadership was satisfying. I mean, so I have to admit that. But anyway, the whole thing that my dad was always interested in the organized bar, and it just seemed to fit. I mean, that's better for me than maybe other forms of volunteerism. So, but plus it was a fairly consuming thing, but that really changed my outlook, gave me great opportunities I'd never have had but for that. To see all those guys go all those places and really understand how things work. And in the latter stages of my participation there, as an officer, I had a great good fortune to be with some very, very able people. So that was a great blessing, and I learned from them. Wright Dixon, Bill Davis, Jim Preston, and a lot of others. So and in those years, a lot was at least a lot was done. I hope it was all constructive. Certainly, in that year, I guess it was shortly before that time the Client Security Fund was created.
Now, when you say that time, what are you talking about?
Well, I'd say before I was an officer and before Wright Nixon, my predecessor, was an officer, is when they did when they enacted the Client Security Fund. And then CLE was mandated in that 4 or 5 year period. IOLTA board was set up, and Wright was good. Wright had a real sense of attempting to provide full opportunity in the in membership. And as I recall, he did largely something at that time. He was getting down to the district bars. You better do this, that, and the other, and which would have avoided the kind of session by which I got elected. But it was certainly that was the way to do it. So I thought those were good years for the bar, and particularly they had just had some unfortunate experience with some of their officers not holding to the mark. So I thought that was a good time, and a number of things done, hopefully for the better.
Roy, can you tell me what Pisgah Legal Services is?
Well, you know, at some point in time, the Bar Association set up a committee to study the formation of legal aid societies or doing something on an organized basis, and out of that grew the first statewide program. And I'm not sure, I think Pisgah just bobbed up locally, because it only serves maybe Buncombe and counties around here.
13 counties?
Okay. So it certainly is an Asheville located outfit that works in 13 surrounding counties, and the purpose is in effect, it's a legal aid society which is rendering service to the indigent, and so this one was set up and became a part of that statewide group, and prospered, I think, over the years. Then shall I give you a recent history of the Pisgah Legal Services?
Well, yeah,
it's a remarkable story. It's it's regional sort of, but it's interesting that whenever a time came after that, when the state bar and the Bar Association formed a committee talking about how to consolidate, and that drew the ire of the mountaineers, of the Pisgah Legal Service people, that they didn't want to surrender the autonomy they had. And that was a big debate, some serious fusses, but as a result, the Pisgah Legal Services became a local entity serving the 13 counties, and really has prospered. It has just grown. And as you know, just completed a $5 million capital campaign, and how many? 17 lawyers? I don't know, but I guess that sounds like a lot. But it's very successful.
Well, Pisgah Legal Services provides legal services to the needy. Why were you interested in that?
Phil, it's the same old story. You know, it was there, and the opportunity arose. So it seemed, it seemed interesting and worthwhile. And I guess there's a lot of satisfaction. It doesn't everybody have satisfaction out of participating in an organization, the board or the leadership. And it does. I mean, the State Bar gave me huge satisfactions that I never gathered just from trying lawsuits or from carrying out typical legal services. So it makes you feel a little better about things, about yourself, to be engaged in some worthwhile project other than just pure practicing law.
So You've been practicing in excess of 50 years, is that right?
Well, it depends on whether you count my my military service.
Right.
55. That adds up to a little more than 50. I finished in 55. Finished law school in 55.
Over your career, what are the highlights as you see them that you've really gotten personal gratification out of, a reward for?
Well, we've mentioned the principal one, which was, of course, the State Bar Council and leadership opportunities there. And see, that spreads out to you get acquainted with lawyers in other states and programs in other states, and the ABA not always applauded by lawyers, but it's what you've got on a national level, and it's an effective organization. So you just get your horizons broadened. Plus, you get to see every major city in the United States. So that was a great deal. I think the opportunity here was gratifying. Of course, that speaking of professionalism, which I hope is weaving in and out of these meandering remarks occasionally. I mean, professionalism, essential in my mind, professionalism essentially means you're going to be competent and you're going to be independent. I mean, you don't kowtow to the clients; they're just the clients. So those aspects, it seemed to me, were important. So I hope that I've remained at a high level of competence, even though I've tried to get into a lot of different kind of practice opportunities.
Roy, in 1993, you published a paper on the pursuit of professionalism, and could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wrote what I believe to be pretty well the definitive statement on the subject. The profession apparently didn't agree, but that's that seems to me what professionalism means in its most essential terms, in its most unique terms, is the competence and independence. I mean, you mean lawyers have to stand up against, even the government itself sometimes in the public interest. But so to be competent, to be independent, and to be acting in the public interest. And that's practice. You see, the practice of law inherently is there. I mean, you're at least for trial lawyers, you're making the justice system work. That's a heavy responsibility. Indeed, one that justifies the monopoly, in effect, that lawyers have in the courts, that they promote that system and do it right. So, to me, that's professionalism. That you're solving problems and you're assisting the administration of justice, and to be specific, the justice system. So that's in the public interest if you do it right, and justifies the status that you have.
Well, you've also chaired the ethics committee of the bar, state bar. Could you tell us a little bit about what you think where attorneys get into trouble in terms of being less than professional?
Well, now the ethics committee was generally, the grievance committee is the one that would have really dealt with allegations of misconduct. The ethics committee is sort of answering questions that come in from the lawyers. But your question is about what ethical concerns exist. Well, I know, see, you always have the example of some few lawyers are just going to flat out steal. Well, that's a huge ethical problem. Not an easy and not a difficult one to solve in terms of what's right. But anyway, that's certainly a deeply troubling factor. In the other, in just in day-to-day practice, I don't know. I think Is civility ethics? I don't know. That's not a deep factor in ethics, it seems to me. But I think it's important. I'm drifting a little away from the ethics issue. You need to point me where you want me to go here. But I think civility is a pretty dear element among lawyers because we deal with controversy. We are in the middle of controversy and ambiguity, and so you're sort of in forensic combat. But if it's not done on a civil basis with respect, then it can become a pretty nasty relationship. So I think, while I don't think that's a punishable, like a serious ethical violation, I do think that civility is important, and I guess it's arguable that we've had some decline in that. Although I really don't believe I'm not one who subscribes to that things are really going to hell, and that it seemed to me the same problems that existed when I came to the bar exist today, and things are different. They're compounded perhaps because the bar is hugely larger now than it was when I came. So, but I think you've got the same problems recurring over and over in terms of ethical issues.
Roy, how is the practice of law different today than it was when you first started?
Well, when I came, there were about 3,000 lawyers in the state. What are there now? 24,000 or so? And it's still, they say, I'm not sure this is still true, but they say that the lawyer to general population ratio in North Carolina is more favorable to lawyers than it is in any other state. Boy, they must have plenty of practitioners over in Tennessee and South Carolina and Virginia, because it seems to me that the growth has just been unexpected. Now we got 2 more law schools, 7 law schools in North Carolina, and there were only 1,137 people took the bar in the last July test. So that's growing, and I think that creates the problems. And I think also the idea of mega firms that cover practice in several states, even firms that cover practice internationally. That's going to be a huge strain on the norms that you've applied in a simpler situation. So I think the growth in the number of lawyers, the growth in the areas, or the growth in areas that they practice, and the practice, I think, has become more sophisticated. It was basically trial by ambush. Are we permitted another homespun story on that subject?
Absolutely. The more
Well,
homespun,
anyway,
the
the
better.
first case I ever tried with my dad down there in Marion after I got out of the Army it would have to be this way. It was alienation of affections. I worked myself to death to prove that the wife had given birth at a time when the husband could not have possibly been the father. Got that proved. I thought I proved my case. So the client takes the stand. The guy who lost the affections of his wife took the stand. And speaking of ambush, the other lawyer, he must have had at least a portfolio of documents, letters and other things signed by my client to one of his other girlfriends with whom he was having an affair. So that was the end of that lawsuit. But anyway, it was trial by ambush in those days. But now you've got discovery much more complex nowadays. So all that, I think that's the problem that the bar faces. It's the proliferation of all these things, of the paperwork, of the rules, of the discovery, of the areas, the geography of practice, and the very significant growth in the number of lawyers. How do you get them all together? How do you have that collegiality that all those old white guys in McDowell County enjoyed whenever you've got a huge diversity? But that's and the diversity is an example of things that have changed. The women lawyers, many women lawyers, black lawyers, and they are respected, and they're respected by the bar organizations, which I would say in my early days was not always the case. So in terms of recognizing people and treating them fair and equal, I'd say we're worlds better today than we used to be. But you've had these other changes have been so significant that I think it'll be a challenge for the bar and for their organized groups, state bar and others, to enforce those things and make them effective in the minds and hearts of every lawyer.
What's your view about lawyer advertising?
I've never been too much of a favorite of that. Again, you know, when I started, you didn't advertise, but it was sort of locked up. It was favorable to the old guys not to be able to advertise. It was harder to break in, and of course they had all the clients. But there was a form. I mean, you know, people would associate and glad hand and get develop contacts, and you got clients. That's a very benign form of advertising, I guess. But I think that that's another development. I don't fight the idea that the federal courts have found that to be a constitutional right, but it can certainly be abused. But it can be used in a way that's professional. So, I mean, your statements about our published matter can be professional and fair and informative and more factual instead of braggadocio. But there's some real abuses in terms of advertising, and which is, you know, almost bragging there, plus saturation. I was in the TV office, in the office at the doctor's office, waiting to get some attention, and the TV was there, and I bet I sat there for an hour, and this same law firm must have been on there 5, 6, 7 times over that time. So, you know, I think it can be abused. It seems to me that it's not all good.
What you're presently still grading bar exams, are you not?
Only 1,137 in the last session, and that only counts the July exam. They probably pick up about 500 in the February exam too.
And how long have you been doing that?
I don't know, 6 years, something like that, 5 or 6 years.
And of course, as we talked about, you've been practicing quite a long time. What motivates you to continue to offer your services to the bar?
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that the same story? You know, the next avenue hasn't opened up. Plus, I got this theory that we all have different talents, and some people have a talent for retirement. You know, they can slip out at 65 and pretty soon they're out at the cliffs playing golf and, you know, and having a wonderful time and enjoy that. But then I think others don't necessarily have quite that gift. And so it seems to me that they ought to be, you know, hopefully the time, the line is drawn when competence is not there. But that if you don't have that talent, then why the heck shouldn't you be allowed to keep on doing what you know how to do? And I appreciate you, Phil, and the others here who haven't changed the locks yet on me. You know, but I do think it's a tension that, you know, there'll come a time when even the most able and long enduring guy is going to have to put it aside. There's always a last surviving Confederate veteran around, you know, and when he goes, he needs to go at the right time.
Well, you have mentored a number of lawyers, yours truly included. What advice would you have for some of the young lawyers today that are coming along?
Well, I don't know what did I tell you. No, I think that. Well, I think if they're through law school and past the bar, hopefully, they know that they want to be a part of this profession, of this fellowship, of this collegiality, and that they ought to, and I think they ought to. It would be helpful to get into the organized bar and do things like that. But basically, I guess I don't have any unique advice. It's just the same advice I'd give you today. Well, I guess I would say you want to hone your skills. You want to accept mentoring. I think that would be important. You accept the mentoring and get and observe the right, correct, able mentors and try to grow in that direction, and observe examples of good lawyering and good professional conduct, and attempt to be a part of that. But there's nothing that I think is that, you know, you got to do this, that, or the other. Same thing I would be telling you, or you'd tell me about how to do things.
Well, I think that something you and I have had over many years is the willingness to come talk with each other about issues and problems that might arise, whether they be ethical, professional, or just a mundane little case.
Uniform Commercial Code.
Right, or the Uniform Commercial Code.
Yeah.
But do you view that, I mean, obviously that's a little bit about what you've been talking about, but don't you think that's a pretty significant advantage to folks that you're willing to at least go to somebody you know, a colleague, and talk with them about issues? Yes,
and not just within the firm. It's been a great deal, but not just in the firm. I think you ought to have a network, and you see that's why get acquainted with the state bar across the state is important, because I've got a number of people I can call and other than, if it's not Uniform Commercial Code, a number of other people I can call and do. And when I'm puzzled about something, I got another homespun toy. If you want it here, I was over there in Murphy in a motel spending the night, ready to go into East Tennessee and take a deposition of some doctor over there. And about that time, I'd had somebody checking on him, and they told and they had informed me about that this guy was accused of lying or something. I mean, he really had done something awful. And I'm going to go over there, and we're going to take that deposition of the doctor, and he's down in federal court in Chattanooga with it. He's before the court in Chattanooga, not in person, but there's charges, and he's got a lawyer in that connection. And I was concerned about, well, I'm going to go over there and blister him with what I know, and it's going to blow him apart. The testimony is not going to be worth a penny with that knowledge, and he doesn't have his lawyer there. Well, can I launch into it? I hope I didn't make the wrong decision, but I called up Bill Davis at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, talked it over with him, and his thought was that that he could have his lawyer there if he wanted him. But this is a matter totally unrelated to the criminal charges in Chattanooga. And so we talked it over there, me in the motel in Murphy, and he in Winston-Salem at home, and we decided what to do, and next way we did it. In the course of the deposition, the doctor got up and ordered me out of the office, and it was on tape. It was absolutely, just ruined his credibility. But anyway, the point is the network, and it's not. I think it's not just in your own firm, and it's certainly with people that don't practice in a setting with others. The people are available all around. Landon was another example of somebody I turned to and ask about things. So I think that network is great. But in this office, you and others have been very, very supportive of me. And in fact, in one instance, that we've talked about often, you got me. I was about ready to handle a case of tremendous damages in a way that would have probably minimized the result. And I was at the beach, Atlantic Beach, on vacation, and called you up.
That's a rarity too, I might add.
Yeah. And said, well, should we just file this in North Carolina? And you said, oh, no. We've got venues, we got jurisdiction on this case in other states. And we filed in several states, wound up in Philadelphia, and you and Bob Hager went up there and tried that case and made millions of dollars. Or I would have filed it in Western North Carolina and wound up with a pittance. So that was, I'm somewhat older than you are, but you were educating me on that occasion, and you're part of the network. And indeed, you really have informed me on quite a number of occasions about issues and been helpful to my decision making.
Roy, do you see a change in the involvement of attorneys in the community, with community involvement, or I realize some individuals suggest that because of the billable hours, particularly in the civil side, that there is more emphasis on doing work as opposed to getting out and being involved in the community as a whole. Do you see that trend, at least in Asheville?
Well, I think it's true, maybe more in other places than in Asheville. It's true that there's a heavy emphasis on making money. I may say maybe that's a drifting phenomenon that's not good.
Right.
But I think that's true. But I don't know that I've seen a diminution in lawyers participating in community affairs. Of course, we got a lot of lawyers. Maybe you could stack it up statistically some way that we're not all doing too much. But my feeling is the lawyers are pretty doggone good about getting out there and helping with volunteer matters. And that whole Pisgah Legal Services thing, not only do they have staff attorneys, but they have oodles of lawyers that are volunteering to render pro bono services.
Well, you've been chancellor of the Episcopal Western Diocese of the Episcopal Church for a number of years.
Bishops come and go, but the chancellor remains the same.
What and you? I won't say that's gratis or pro bono, but certainly you're giving a service to your church.
Yeah, well, see there again, that fits my hope of being able to do different kinds of practices. They've gotten me into things that I wouldn't have gotten into through my own connections. With the type of clients I generally do. Things like huge conservation easements. So I learned something about that. And and one of the most, and if you talk about a heart-rending lawsuit, is whenever you come up with a clergy person who's mistreated somebody else. So it's that's afforded a lot of opportunities that are not particularly religious, but are more legal. So anyway, I've enjoyed that because it gives me variety.
Well, and the reason I raised it is in part because you are in a position to assist the church because of your training and experience,
Right.
and have done so.
Right. Which I think, and you're talking community service here, I think, because I know you are particularly active there in that Methodist church of yours. But I moved up to the Episcopalians myself once I got married and had gained that status.
You married above yourself.
That's true, quite I did. Moved above myself.
What do you
Thought
see?
I'd married money, but I made a mistake.
Roy, what are the changes that you see in the profession that could enhance professionalism?
Well, you've got Mel Wright and the Chief Justice in the professionalism program. But you know, the truth is, I think the organized bar, all of the major organized bars promote professionalism. When I was president of the state bar, we were talking professionalism. We had a committee on professionalism, and I think that the emphasis on that subject through and its ethics or professionalism is a part of I believe that's typically a part of any major CLE program. So, but I guess the truth is the best assurance, the most assuring thing about professionalism is that you have people that are respected and practice it. So I think the example you or others might give is maybe the most important thing. But certainly, you know, to be able to understand what it's supposed to be, professionalism, and the concepts of rules of professional conduct, ethical considerations, to know that, to articulate and have it known is important, and to have programs about it is important. But the most persuasive thing to me has been the examples I've observed as I've gone through the years.
Roy, that will conclude our discussion of your laudable legal career. We want to thank you for the many years you've devoted to the bar and to this law firm. And personally, I want to thank you for mentoring me and guiding me in the practice of this great profession. Thank you.
That's great.
I am honored to be with you tonight to present the Chief Justice's Professionalism Award. The award is presented annually to a member of the North Carolina legal community who has demonstrated the noblest attributes of professionalism throughout his or her career. Tonight, I am truly privileged to honor a mountain man who is no stranger to this organization and who personifies the highest ideals of our profession, namely excellence in the practice and service to others. This year's recipient is Roy W. Davis, Jr. of the Van Winkle Law Firm in Asheville, North Carolina. Roy graduated from Davidson College in 1952 and the University of North Carolina School of Law with honors in 1955. He joined the Van Winkle Law Firm in 1960 and is still working every day, including many weekends. For many years, he served as president of the firm. Roy is recognized as a successful litigator and mediator, but his reputation as a consummate professional in every way is his trademark. With his thorough preparation, unquestioned integrity, and calm demeanor, Roy demonstrates the utmost respect for the judiciary, his fellow lawyers, and his clients. He has guided and mentored numerous attorneys both within and outside his own firm. One of his mentees, Michelle Rapon, a partner in the Van Winkle firm, is fond of telling this anecdote about Roy. As a relatively green lawyer, Michelle appeared in court and was confronted by a rather brusque, agitated older lawyer who, after ranting for a minute or two, said to the court, "I will not have that young snippet tell me what the law is." Horrified, hurt, and furious to have been insulted in such an unprofessional manner, Michelle marched into Roy's office and vented her frustration, fully expecting Roy to share her outrage. Instead, Roy diffused the situation by saying in his soft-spoken mountain drawl, "Well, Michelle, at least he called you a young snippet." The high regard and respect in which Roy is held by his peers is reflected in the numerous offices to which he has been elected and honors he has received in his 55 years at the bar. Roy has served as president of the North Carolina State Bar, has chaired the Ethics Committee of the State Bar, and currently serves on the Board of Law Examiners. He is a past member of the ABA House of Delegates, has served as a vice president of the North Carolina Bar Association, and has chaired the Administration of Justice Committee and the Young Lawyers Division of the North Carolina Bar Association. Roy is a fellow and past state chair of the American College of Trial Lawyers, as well as a fellow of the International Society of Barristers. He has been inducted into the North Carolina General Practice Hall of Fame and was given the Centennial Award by the 28th Judicial District Bar in 2003. For many years, Roy has been the moving force behind Pisgah Legal Services, serving on its board of directors and as its president. Pisgah Legal Services provides civil legal services to the poor in the western part of North Carolina and is nationally recognized for the outstanding work of its local attorneys and staff. In recognition of Roy's leadership and dedication to Pisgah Legal Services, the organization's annual award honoring volunteers for their pro bono work was named the Roy Davis Award, and Roy was the first recipient. If all these honors and responsibilities are not enough, Roy has also been an active member of his church. Throughout his stellar career, Roy has personified professionalism with his selfless dedication and commitment to the law, the legal profession, and his fellow citizens. He has set an extraordinary example for all attorneys to follow. As Chief Justice, I proudly present the 2009 Chief Justice's Professionalism Award to Roy W. Davis, Jr. Obviously, you don't think he deserves it. The award reads, "The Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court presents the Chief Justice's Professionalism Award to Roy W. Davis, Jr., Esquire, Van Winkle, Buck, Wallstarns, and Davis, for your dedication and commitment to the principles of professionalism in the legal community in North Carolina. Sarah Parker, Chief Justice, October 22, 2009. Roy, congratulations and many, many thanks for all that you've done for the legal profession.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Justice Parker, for your remarks, and thank all of you for making this occasion possible. I will always treasure my memory of this evening, and I want to tell you informally, folks, being honored ain't easy. I'm pleased to have in attendance tonight the 4 children of my marriage to the lovely Madeline Davis, a union that has lasted so far for 54 years. These offspring are Walton, Sissy, Rebecca, and Sally Davis, and I have a special honor tonight that my granddaughter Harriet Jackson is with them. So will all of you folks stand up and let these folks see what a bunch of Davises really looks like. You too, Harriet. You too, Harriet. You too, Harriet. I assume it's okay in this company for me to say that 2 of these 4 children are lawyers, as was my dad. You know, we just can't stamp out that lawyer gene in the Davis family. Although it's too early to say whether or not the grandchildren will be infected like my children have been. I'd also like to recognize among those in attendance tonight several members of the Van Winkle Law Firm, where I have sojourned now for almost 50 years. I don't have time to name all of these folks, but I'd like to identify several of them. Ann Jowers, a superlative personal assistant. Nancy Fowler, a superlative paralegal. Katie Kolarovich, a superlative nurse consultant to our trial attorneys. And Phil Smith, current president of the firm, himself a lawyer, of professional proportions. Would all of you please, and all of you, not just the ones I've named, please stand and be recognized tonight. If I deserve this honor tonight, it's only because of my good fortune in having known and worked with so many fine lawyers who have served as my mentors in professionalism and whose examples I've tried to follow. I hope, Tony DeSanti, notwithstanding your admonition that I got to be brief, you'll allow me to name a few of these mentors. I know you're my buddy and didn't really mean that, Tony. I'm told that compassion for others is an attribute of professionalism. Early in my career, while I was still in law school, I observed a lawyer who demonstrated this attribute. Dean Henry Brandis of the law school at Carolina, who went out of his way to assist and support some of his more confused students, which naturally enough included me. I also understand that civility is an element of professionalism. I saw this demonstrated early in my career from the lawyers of McDowell County, where I grew up. As I joined them in the practice of law, I came to appreciate collegiality and good fellowship among lawyers. The lawyers there were invariably civil to one another. They were fair to one another. Heck, they actually liked one another. And even in forensic battle, they respected one another. And I'm proud to say that including in my mentors from that time was my own dad. In the course of my career, there have been 2 preeminently professional groups that I've been permitted to join. Each member of these groups has been my mentor in professionalism. One of them is the Council of the State Bar, on which I served over 20 years ago. The other is the Board of Law Examiners, of which I'm now a member. From these 2 groups, I'd like to identify only 3 of my special mentors. Number 1, Wright Dixon of Raleigh, president of the State Bar, who preached the gospel that the State Bar exists to serve the public. And isn't this the essence of professionalism, to act in the public interest? Next, I'd like to recognize and remember Jim Preston of Charlotte, who was recently honored by Carolina Law School for his, but I remember him not because he was so honored, but for his competence and skill as a State Bar officer and as a practicing lawyer. And finally, a mentor with whom I've served on both the council and the law examiners, who I'm sure doesn't even realize that he's my mentor. I'm referring to the formerly young William K. Davis of Winston-Salem. Let me tell you, my friends, from over 20 years of experience, Bill Davis is one guy who simply knows what is right and believes in doing it. Lest I be admonished for not identifying any women lawyers among my members of my mentors, and I'm certainly have in mind what I heard last night from the podium here. I would like to remember one Naomi Peanut Morris, my law school classmate who became chief judge of the Court of Appeals, for teaching me in law school about hard work and friendly competition among law students.
Finally, I've had the benefit of many mentors in my law firm. Many are practicing today and some of them are here tonight. But I'd like to mention only two old-timers. One is Herbert Hyde, for the splendid independence that he demonstrated in his law practice. Herbert was also a public servant in both the state Senate and the state house of our General Assembly. And he would have been elected to higher state office but for his unfortunate habit of telling the voters exactly where he stood on all the controversial issues of the day. The last and probably most significant of my mentors at law is my partner, O.E. Starnes, who has guided me from the day I set foot at Van Winkle until this very day. And it was O.E. who taught me the most valuable law lesson I've ever learned, that you can accomplish a heck of a lot more by civility, persuasion, and good humor than you can ever achieve by means of arrogance or ambush. So in closing, as I thank all of you, let me also thank all of my mentors, both named and unnamed, for the wonderful award you've given me this evening. Thank you so much.